Paul Hogan's life reads like an adventure script filled with grit, laughter, heartbreak, and fame that stretched far beyond his native Australia. Best known as the charming bushman of Crocodile Dundee, Hogan experienced soaring professional triumphs and deeply personal trials, including a very public and painful divorce from his co-star and former wife, Linda Kozlowski. To understand the man behind the legend and the private turmoil that once shook his world, we have to travel back to the dusty mining town where it all began. Paul Hogan was born on October 8, 1939, in Lightning Ridge, New South Wales, a rugged outback town renowned for opal mining and the grit of those who lived there. His arrival came at a time when Australia, like much of the world, was still reeling from the Great Depression and bracing for the global upheaval of World War II. Little is recorded about his parents or early family life, but those wide, arid landscapes and the no-nonsense ethos of rural Australia left a lasting mark on his character. Growing up, Hogan absorbed the plain-spoken humor of working people. The isolation of the bush, coupled with the country's post-war resourcefulness, shaped his down-to-earth nature and gave him an instinctive understanding of how to find levity even in hardship. Rather than a childhood filled with artistic grooming, he experienced the rough edges of outback life, an upbringing that would later give his comedy an authenticity audiences could instantly recognize. Hogan did not follow a polished path toward entertainment. Instead, he carved his own way through resilience and charisma. In his early adulthood, he took on one of Sydney's most iconic and physically demanding jobs, a rigger on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. High above the bustling harbor, he worked on maintaining and repairing the colossal steel structure, a task that required fearlessness, stamina, and steady nerves. This gritty work toughened him and exposed him to a colorful mix of fellow laborers whose banter and bravado fueled his comedic instincts. He learned to laugh in the face of danger, literally while suspended hundreds of feet in the air. The bridge wasn't a stage, yet it honed his timing and ability to find humor in precarious moments. Without realizing it, Hogan was gathering the raw material that would one day define his comedic voice. Fame came almost by accident. In 1971, Hogan, not yet a professional comedian, decided on a whim to audition for the Australian television talent program New Faces. Armed with a quick wit and a style of self-deprecating humor steeped in Aussie vernacular, he charmed both judges and audience. His act felt unpolished but electric, a refreshing contrast to the imported comedic styles dominating television at the time. Viewers loved his cheeky observations and the way he poked fun at everyday life. That single performance changed everything, revealing a natural entertainer who could command a crowd without scripts or gimmicks. The appearance launched him from construction worker to rising comedic talent almost overnight. The success of that first appearance opened doors that Hogan strode through with characteristic boldness. Soon he headlined The Paul Hogan Show, a sketch comedy series he not only starred in but also wrote and produced. Running through the 1970s and early 1980s, the show became a sensation, celebrated for its irreverent humor and sly satire of Australian culture. Audiences adored Hogan's ability to lampoon everyday situations while laughing at himself. His characters, quirky, outrageous, and entirely memorable, earned the show an international following in places as far-flung as South Africa. Recognition followed quickly. In 1973, he received the prestigious TV Week Logie Award for Best New Talent, a clear sign that the rigger from Sydney Harbour Bridge had become a household name. By the mid-1980s, Hogan was a beloved television figure, but his biggest triumph lay ahead. After a modest film debut in Fatty Finn, 1980, and a dramatic turn in the miniseries Anzacs, 1985, he co-wrote and starred in a film that would redefine Australian cinema, Crocodile Dundee, released in 1986. The movie followed the adventures of charismatic bushman Michael J. Dundee as he navigated the untamed outback and the bustling streets of New York City. Its mix of rugged adventure and fish-out-of-water comedy proved irresistible worldwide. Produced on a budget of under $10 million, it grossed hundreds of millions, becoming one of the most profitable films of the decade. critics and audiences alike were captivated by Hogan's effortless charm. He won the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Comedy or Musical, while the screenplay earned Oscar and BAFTA nominations. Beyond box office success, the film became a cultural touchstone, putting Australian slang, scenery, and spirit in the global spotlight. Hogan had become an international star almost overnight. Embodying a character who was equal parts larrikin and gentleman, a universal archetype of the good-natured outsider, Hogan reprised the role in Crocodile Dundee 2, 1988. While financially successful, the sequel drew lukewarm critical reviews, with some feeling it lacked the fresh magic of the original. Undeterred, Hogan continued to explore diverse roles. In 1990, he starred in Almost an Angel, playing a small-time crook on a path to redemption. Despite its heart, the film struggled commercially and critically. The 1994 Western comedy Lightning Jack and the 1996 family film Flipper also fell short of box office expectations, though Hogan's performances retained a loyal following. He returned as Dundee one last time in Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, 2001, a nostalgic curtain call that marked the end of an era. Even as Hollywood opportunities slowed, Hogan stayed active in Australian cinema. Films like Strange Bedfellows, 2004, and Charlie and Boots, 2009, showcased his enduring comedic warmth and proved he could still draw audiences at home. By 2013, he made a well-received guest appearance on Adam Hill's Tonight, reminding fans that his charm had not faded. While Hogan's professional life had dizzying highs, his personal journey was equally eventful. He married Nolene Edwards in 1958, long before fame found him, and together they raised a large family. Their marriage endured the early years of struggle and the whirlwind of his rising stardom, but it wasn't without strain. They divorced in 1981, reconciled, and remarried within a year, only to separate for good in 1986, the same year Crocodile Dundee rocketed Hogan to international fame. On that film's set, he met his co-star Linda Kozlowski. Their on-screen chemistry blossomed into real-life romance, and they married in 1990. For more than 2 decades, they were one of Hollywood's most admired couples, sharing both professional projects and a son, Chance. Yet the marriage eventually fractured under the weight of public scrutiny, lifestyle differences, and the relentless pressure of fame. When Kozlowski filed for divorce in 2013, citing irreconcilable differences, headlines framed it as the end of an iconic partnership. Hogan later spoke candidly about the emotional toll, acknowledging the pain and disillusionment that accompanied the split. He described it not as a dramatic betrayal, but as a slow, difficult realization that their paths had diverged. For a man known for humor and optimism, confronting such personal loss was especially challenging. Despite the heartbreak, Hogan maintained close ties with his children and has often emphasized family as his true anchor. Friends say he approached the ordeal with the same wry resilience that defined his career, finding moments of levity even in sadness. Today, Paul Hogan stands as a figure who transcended the typical arc of celebrity. From a high-wire rigger to a Golden Globe-winning actor, his journey reflects the power of authenticity and perseverance. He never trained formally in acting or comedy, yet his natural charm captured hearts across continents. Though he has largely stepped away from Hollywood, Hogan remains active in charity work and occasional media appearances. In interviews, he reflects on fame with a mix of gratitude and bemusement, crediting luck as much as talent for his remarkable career. Fans continue to embrace Crocodile Dundee, not just as a film, but as a cultural milestone that celebrated the Australian spirit and introduced a singular personality to the world. The hardships, including the very public divorce from Linda Kozlowski, are now part of a broader life story defined less by scandal and more by resilience. Hogan's legacy lies in his ability to make audiences laugh, to bridge cultures with humor, and to remind people everywhere that an unpolished, genuine voice can captivate the globe. Even as the spotlight dimmed, Hogan quietly gave back to the community that had once cheered him to superstardom. Over the years, he has supported children's hospitals, bushfire relief drives, and arts programs in rural Australia. Friends and charity organizers describe him as hands-on and pragmatic, preferring direct involvement over grand publicity stunts. These efforts reinforce the notion that Hogan never lost touch with the everyday people who inspired his humor. Fame brought not only riches but also a long-running dispute with the Australian Taxation Office. Beginning in the early 2000s, Hogan faced allegations of offshore tax evasion connected to earnings from Crocodile Dundee. The saga stretched for years and was splashed across headlines, but ultimately ended with no charges filed. Hogan later spoke of the ordeal as both exhausting and absurd, using his trademark wit to diffuse tension while defending his reputation. Hogan's breakout success coincided with a wave of international curiosity about Australian culture. Crocodile Dundee didn't just entertain. It reframed how the world viewed the nation, its slang, humor, and rugged landscapes. Generations of filmmakers cite the movie as proof that a uniquely Australian story could resonate worldwide. Tourism boards even credited Hogan's famous tourism commercials, and his Dundee character with boosting travel to the outback for years. Afterward, younger Australian comedians and actors often mention Hogan as an influence and informal mentor. His path from bridge rigger to global star remains a favorite reference point for performers who feel outside the traditional industry pipeline. Hogan has occasionally offered guidance to emerging talent, encouraging them to trust their voice and lean into the authenticity that made his own career so distinctive. Now in his 80s, Hogan lives a quieter life in Los Angeles while frequently visiting Australia to see family. He maintains a dry sense of humor about aging and fame, often joking that his best special effect is simply still being here. In interviews, he stresses gratitude, simplicity, and laughter as the core ingredients of a meaningful life, a fitting credo for someone whose charm once spanned the globe. Even in semi-retirement, Hogan has remained a compelling figure for filmmakers and journalists. In recent years, he has been the subject of in-depth TV specials and podcasts that revisit his career and the cultural phenomenon of Crocodile Dundee. These programs often mix archival footage with fresh interviews, allowing audiences to rediscover his quick wit and to hear his reflections on fame, creativity, and the unpredictable turns of show business. Fans are always delighted when Hogan reconnects with actors from his past projects. Periodic public appearances with old cast members, particularly brief on-screen moments with Linda Kozlowski for charity events, spark nostalgia. While their marriage ended years ago, both have spoken warmly about the bond they formed on set and the professional respect that remains. Such reunions underscore the lasting friendships Hogan built across decades in the industry. Hogan's signature, catchphrases, and the rugged charm of Mick Dundee continue to pop up in everything from animated sitcoms to late-night comedy sketches. Younger audiences who weren't alive when the first film debuted still encounter his iconic "That's not a knife" line through memes and viral clips. This persistent presence shows how deeply his work has embedded itself in global pop culture. In interviews, Hogan often muses on how Australia has evolved since his youth. He speaks about the nation's growing diversity, its shifting humor, and the pride he feels in seeing Australian talent succeed internationally. He credits the country's laid-back spirit and willingness to laugh at itself as key ingredients in his own comedic style, and he remains an unofficial ambassador of that quintessential Aussie attitude. Looking ahead, Hogan expresses simple wishes: good health, time with his children and grandchildren, and opportunities to keep laughing. He says he no longer chases projects but remains open to the occasional cameo or voiceover that sparks his interest. Above all, he hopes the next generation of entertainers feels empowered to take risks and trust their authentic selves, the very qualities that carried him from a bridge in Sydney to the world stage. Beyond the Golden Globe that crowned his Crocodile Dundee triumph, Hogan has received numerous accolades from film festivals and civic organizations around the world. From tourism boards honoring his influence on global travel to Lifetime Achievement Awards in Australia, these recognitions highlight his lasting cultural impact. Each ceremony provides another chance for Hogan's trademark wit. He often deflects grand praise with a self-deprecating quip that wins over the audience. Fans have long hoped Hogan would put his life story into print. Over the years, he has toyed with the idea of a memoir, occasionally releasing tantalizing anecdotes in interviews or televised specials. While no formal autobiography has yet appeared, insiders note that he keeps extensive personal notes and stories, leaving open the possibility of a candid, humorous book that would offer a first-hand look at his remarkable journey. Hogan's cheerful invitation to "come and say g'day," used in 1980s tourism commercials, reshaped how the world imagined Australia. Tourism Australia credits those ads, alongside Crocodile Dundee, with a measurable rise in international visitors. Travel operators still reference his campaigns, and many tourists admit that their first image of the country came from Hogan's easygoing smile and the allure of the outback. Despite global fame, Hogan has maintained an approachable rapport with his admirers. He frequently stops for photos, signs memorabilia, and chats with fans who recount how his films shaped their childhoods. Those who meet him describe the encounter as meeting a mate rather than a movie star, reinforcing the authenticity that defined his career from the start. Comedy writers and performers across the world cite Hogan's blend of laconic storytelling and sharp observation as an influence. His ability to infuse ordinary scenarios with sly humor paved the way for other Australian comics to find international audiences. Festivals and comedy workshops often reference his sketches as examples of timeless comedic construction that still resonates decades later. Decades after their original broadcast, the Paul Hogan Show sketches and the Crocodile Dundee trilogy continue to draw audiences through cable reruns and modern streaming platforms. New viewers discover his brand of Aussie humor, while longtime fans revisit favorite episodes. The ability of these programs to remain relevant in the on-demand era underscores the timeless appeal of Hogan's storytelling. Hogan often credits a small circle of trusted collaborators, writers, producers, and cinematographers for shaping his career. He speaks warmly of late-night brainstorming sessions and the camaraderie that carried projects from concept to screen. Highlighting these relationships not only reveals his loyalty, but also shows how creative synergy helped him craft comedy that traveled the world. The rugged outback attire of Mick Dundee, leather hat, sleeveless vest,